That sound really brings me back. Reminds me of the good old days, a pipe in my hand, a glass of whiskey in the other, sitting down by the fire and playing some video games. Wait, I was 6. Whose memories are these? Today I want to talk about a game that sapped away so many hours of my childhood. I'm sure we've all had those games where you sit down for a session, look over after a bit and realize it's been 6 hours. Well, a game called Baldies was one of those for me. This disc is still the same one I had as a kid. I'm surprised it still works. Baldies was released in 1995 on the Jaguar CD of all things, and it came to PC a year later, which is the version I have. In fact, there was 2 releases on the PC, one for MS-DOS and one on disc. There was also a release for the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation, which I actually managed to pick up a copy of. I'll be checking this one out near the end of the video. Okay, so we have our Baldies. Now what? There certainly are quite a lot of them. Okay, so we're red team, and over there is blue team. I wonder what army the enemy team has in store for me. Oh, it's just him, isn't it? The first level is designed for you to just mess around and see what things do. It's a good time to experiment with all the options the game gives you. But to better explain some things, I'm gonna skip a few levels. Okay, so what is the Baldies' main objective? Well, it's to kill anyone that has hair. That is seriously the only objective, and everything you do in this game is to do that more effectively. And believe me, the game offers quite a few ways to do this. But I feel like I should go over a few things first. There are 4 Baldy types: workers, builders, scientists, and soldiers, and each do something while in a building and on the field. Workers don't do a lot. On the field, they just build the worker meter, which is sort of a mana bar for some abilities later. Their most important role is breeding. A large number of them inside a building will actually create more Baldies, which increases the overall population, making them the most useless and the most necessary type. The builder builds up the builder meter while on the field and builds buildings where you put the flag. Putting a lot of builders in a building will upgrade the building, giving you certain advantages and more options, which I'll get into a bit later. Scientists are the most interesting because they allow you to research weaponry. When out on the field, they help build the research meter, but are also primarily used for sacrifices to place the weapons, which again we'll get into shortly. And lastly, the soldier. He likes to hit things. Out of all of the Baldy types, the soldiers and scientists stand out the most, and that's because they are the unit that primarily takes out the enemy. Building a barracks, which is one of the upgrades from the tier 1 house, and having soldiers inside the barracks generates ammo over time. Even just putting 1 soldier in the enemy team can reduce their numbers by quite a lot, as this guy likes to go around and shoot anyone he sees moving. Now, your team's shield can be moved, and if you move that to a location, your soldiers generally stay in that location. But an effective way of clearing out an enemy house is to put the shield on top. That will cause your Baldies to go and invade. It's a pretty good set it and forget it feature, but eventually, much like the rest of the game, you'll figure out that there are certain ways to abuse it. The second tier of barracks allows the soldiers to use grenades, and there will grenade houses you put the shield on. But what if I just put a rock in the way and they can't get inside the house I'm trying to invade? What's that? They just keep throwing grenades and killing everyone inside without using my Baldies? Ain't I the worst? Now, what the scientists bring to the table is probably the most fun feature of Baldies and probably the most useless. Yes, it does give you the most options, but there are definitely choices in there that just aren't worth it. As you upgrade any house, your supply of various weapons to research expands. What kind of weapon just depends on what kind of house you're making, but specifically building the research house and putting Baldies inside will allow you to start making these weapons. The more of these houses and the more Baldies you have working on it, the quicker they charge, as well as having some Baldies out in the field to give more research meter, as well as them being a sacrifice for some weapons to be placed. Oh man, I've been waiting to talk about the weapons, because these are easily the most fun thing to mess with in the game. Simple things like a bear trap or a pitfall, or more creative things like CO2 to... Oh my god. Ooh, that is quite brutal. Oh dang. Oh no. It's here! There are 2 other ways of getting weapons. Putting certain objects on top of the research house will create new weapons. This will be confirmed with a sound. Much like the regular weapons, these can be either really great or really pointless. But the amount of times you can use them is dictated by how many items you put in the research, which often means some of the really good weapons are extremely rare because there's only one item on the map. The other set of items you can get is by researching the previous item. For example, you can get better mines if you research the original. Quite a few of the weapons actually have upgrades. Increases their effectiveness quite a lot, usually also giving them an AoE effect. These weapons are just really fun to mess with, especially dropping them dead in the center of a mass of enemies. But that's really the problem with them. They're just fun, they're not necessarily effective. Yes, there are some weapons which will actually destroy buildings, but it's not as effective as just sending an entire army of dudes and using the trick I showed you before, and that is where the main problem with Baldies comes into play. Yes, the weapons can reduce numbers, but once you've figured out the best method in just taking out the enemy, chances are you're going to use that a lot because the game gets really hard otherwise. The enemy gets really aggressive as we get into the later levels. When upgrading a house, putting a rock or a weapon by the house makes it so they don't have the room to upgrade. So putting a rock by the enemy's starter house just makes it so it can't go anywhere, and you'll start relying on that strategy to slow down the enemy, and ultimately it will become really repetitive. It doesn't help that at the beginning of a level, it always feels like a slog setting up. I've always found the best strategy to just make a population building and then keep rocks around the enemy to stop them from upgrading their base. You do have to keep an eye on it though, because they can move the rocks out of the way when you least expect it. It wouldn't be so bad if the game tried to change it up a bit as we progressed, but it does get to a point where it just kind of stops. By the time you've beaten the first world, you've seen most of what the game has to offer. It does try to keep itself interesting by changing the visual themes. Each world brings its own style, usually changing what the houses and weapons look like too. The first world is pretty standard, of lush greenery and lovely castles, with all of the weapons being pretty much standard. There's some nice little scenery bits like, ooh, a Maui head. The second world is a snowy biome, which is my personal favorite, with the houses being igloos and winter castles. And I really like the bear traps being just huge mouths with pointy teeth, and the Harrys are wearing nice fluffy winter coats. The third world, which I've been told is called Europe, and given the house theme, I'd believe that. This place probably has some of the better music, which is actually currently playing, but the buildings kind of feel unorganized with their design, which I suppose makes sense given they're meant to be referencing Europe as a whole, with the Harrys this time being tourists. And that's actually where I stopped. I didn't get past Europe because I didn't want to. I remember having so much fun with this game, but I feel like I came to the same conclusion then as I did now. It just gets too repetitive. This might be a game to enjoy in small bursts over a long period of time. And what is there is really fun. Honestly, you can be content just beating Worlds 1 and 2 maybe. It's got nice graphics and quirky weapons, and what I did play I had fun with. Of course, getting it to work on Windows 10 is a pain in the ass, but it is possible. Just don't try to record it, because that is actually the worst. End my suffering! But that isn't where our story ends. At the beginning, I said I picked up a copy of the PlayStation version, and that's because I wanted to see what the game was like on other systems. Well, jumping in, the first thing I notice is the big graphics difference. Whoa, look at that next level graphics, dang old 3D house. Obviously, where the resolution is smaller, the menus unfortunately took a bit of a beating, but they still do their purpose pretty well. I don't know if I like the design of the houses on the PlayStation 1 version. I don't know, the castle just looks a bit bizarre. Also huge! Now, because you're using a gamepad to control a cursor, of course, because I'm used to the PC controls, that makes things feel a little sluggish and slow. Strategies that worked on that version might not be so efficient on this. Despite that, I actually am grateful that this version exists, specifically for this guy here. The amount of useful information this guy gives you is amazing. He does exist in the PC version, but he's absolutely useless. I had always just guessed how many builders you need to maintain a house, but this officially confirms it. Wait, do the upgrades also have a progress bar? What the hell, man? Where was that in the PC version? Everything else basically plays the same way, in terms of gameplay anyway. The weapons are a lot tamer in this version though. Explosions from the mines not showing body parts at all, and just gore in general got removed. The soldier is quite different as well. In the PC version, the shield is kind of an area where the soldiers kind of stay. On the PlayStation 1 version though, they're like a SWAT team ready to move in on your order. Of course, the music sounds completely different. I've been playing it through the video alongside the PC version, but the one thing they decided to not change was any of the sound effects, which means... But other than that, nothing leaps out to me as vastly different, though I can appreciate the game offers two ways of saving, either through memory card or through password. And of course, the main benefit being there is a much higher chance for you to get this to work, it being on the PlayStation and not a game from 1996 trying to work on Windows 10. And that about wraps up my experiences with Baldies. It was a bit of a shame that I didn't feel the drive to push forward, but that's just the experience I've had with the game. I feel like if it wasn't so repetitive, it would have been a lot better. But I'm also not one to look past the fact that that could be my fault sticking to the same strategy. But even when not abusing that strategy, the game doesn't change enough to make it different throughout the playthrough. Once you've done all the main things, it's just the same gimmicks again, but on a different level. Despite that though, I did still have fun with Baldies. Even with what I've said, I feel like the positives outweigh the negatives, and it could be different for someone playing it fresh, or for someone playing it over a long period of time. But those were my memories of Baldies. Have you heard of it before? Because when I bring it up, a lot of people often just go... I'd love to know what you think either way, especially if you've had a chance to have a go yourself. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Pixelated Memories, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching Pixelated Memories. And a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters for being so supportive and so patient. Seriously guys, thank you. But hey, if you want to watch more episodes of Pixelated Memories, there are 2 available for you to choose right there. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed and watched all the way to the end. And of course, give that subscribe button a good old press, and the bell if you're feeling generous. And thank you once again for watching another Pixelated Memories. I'll see you next time. Take care, and goodbye.